Hi, friend. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About That. I have a very special guest with me today. Say hi.
Hi.
We have Morgan with us today. We're going to talk about our friendship and just how the Lord has just led us both in completely different directions from starting in the same spot, kind of, but still being like best friends through it all. So let's talk about that. Morgan, introduce yourself. Tell us. Oh, also, we are eating breakfast and drinking coffee at the same time that we're doing this. So it's a little mukbang or whatever it's called. I don't know. So if you're watching, that's what is happening. If you're listening, that's what's happening. So, Morgan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Morgan. I am 23 years old. I'm from Tennessee. Living here in Auburn. Graduated from Auburn just last December. Been friends with Sophie since sophomore year. But I actually met her before that. We'll talk about that probably later. But we didn't really know each other. And then fast forward 4 years, we're still best friends. She's one of my closest friends here that I know I can go to with everything. And just working and trying to figure out. I work at Walmart pharmacy, so I sell drugs. I also have like a part-time job up in Nashville, Tennessee, with the Titans.
Yeah.
But besides that, I'm just working and
Figuring out what's next.
figuring it out.
So, Morgan mentioned we met each other sophomore year. Or we met each other before that, but we became friends sophomore year. So we joined a sophomore girls community group at the church. Ironically, we both joined that community group with our roommates.
We did. I just thought about that. Hey, Cubby.
Be featured on the podcast.
Come on in. My husband's coming to say hey. He's coming up on an episode.
Hey, everybody.
He's going to be on an episode coming up too, so y'all get ready for that. Okay, cool. So, we joined the community group with our roommates. My roommate did not continue. She grew up Catholic, and I don't think it was what she was looking for.
My roommate did continue.
Yes. But you tell our friend what the first interaction was between us before that we quote-unquote met.
Well, I was taking, I think it was biology. And because before I moved to business, I thought I was going to be a pharmacist one day. And it was one of those things where I wasn't like focused on what the Lord had for me. I was like, oh, this is going to be a job that I'm going to make a lot of money. And that's what my whole end goal was, because it had always been ingrained in my head, like, Morgan, you need to make lots of money so that you can pay all these student loans off. And money was always the thing. So I was like, all right, I'll just go be a pharmacist. And I quickly found out that science...
Which you worked at the Walmart pharmacy back in Tennessee in high school,
I worked
right?
in an independent pharmacy.
Yeah. So it didn't just like come out of your
Yeah,
butt.
I had been working, and it was something that I kind of enjoyed at the time. Like, I was like, well, this could be fun. It was just something that I think I could do. Well, then I got to school, quickly realized science was not as easy as my high school had made it out to be, as I just sat there. And also freshman year, I was not really living for the Lord. We'll get into that probably. And so school wasn't my first focus. And so I decided after probably my second failed test of that class, I should probably try to go to a SI session. So I went, and we were going to be put in groups. I didn't really know anyone in this class. And we were going to work on this thing where you sort the different cycles of the cell.
I love how many details you remember from this, and I literally just remember sitting in a circle.
Yeah, we were talking about like the phases of the cell splitting off, whatever that's called, you know. And we had to put them in order. And so I go and I sit at this table because I didn't know anybody, And here comes this one girl who is just loud and talking to everybody, and she's just leading the group, like, oh, I know this, it's supposed to go here. And then her and her friend, they asked for opinions, and I was just like, oh, I think that looks right, because I'm sitting there, I don't know anything, and I'm just like, yep, that looks good to me. And come to find out, that girl was this girl.
You didn't like me at the time.
She was just kind of loud. I was like,
I just have a really strong personality.
Yeah, that's what, but I was just like, but that, like I said, I didn't know anybody, so I just was like, she just kind of seems like she would be a know-it-all and just be kind of like obnoxious. But now here we are.
Yeah, so we can go back to sophomore year.
Yep.
I don't know, we didn't really get super close until Passion.
Yes.
We started that sophomore girls group in August. It started at the beginning of the semester. The whole community group was going to go to Passion 2020 in Atlanta. And some girls, like, lived in Atlanta, or, like, parents lived in Atlanta, so they had a place to stay except for me, you, and your roommate.
Yes.
So, who was in our community group. So, like, it wasn't strange. Like, I think I was closer to her than I was with you at the time.
Yes.
Because between August and December, when we were supposed to go, the conversation arose of us three living together because I was so close with her.
Yes.
Because I remember come December, me and her had already signed our lease and you had not.
Yes. I know there were some issues. There was another group of friends that I had that also wanted me to live with them. And so we were going to try to figure out a way that there could be, like, multiples of us living, like, because I think the apartments had 4 in them, and we were going to try to do 8, but they had already signed a lease for a 3-bedroom, and so it was a whole thing where I committed to too many things because I can't live in 2 houses at once.
But it was also a situation where you had already lived with her. It's very hard living with friends.
Yes.
It's very hard living with friends that you were friends with before. So that was...
You don't know someone until you live with them.
Yes. And so you were just struggling with, like, this is affecting our friendship, but, like, how do I do this in a good way? And then I think you just kind of waited until the last minute to where, like, even the best way to handle it was not going to be received well because you waited so long.
Yeah. And I think part of that, too, I had other influences from this other group of friends. I feel like they were kind of trying to influence me to not be friends with this specific roommate anymore. So it was all of these voices and things going on.
And then also, like, what you felt like you should do versus what you actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. Anyways, but we get to Passion, and it's 3 of us staying in the back of someone's house. That's, like,
a little scary.
It was so sketch. And, like, I remember one time we were, like, loading up the car or something, and, like, we see, like, an ambulance carrying out, like, a body bag. Like, some woman had, like, a heart attack across the street. And it was just, like, what in the heck? Anyways, very sketchy. But we went to Passion that year, and then...
10 out of 10.
Yeah, it was so good. And we got so close, I think, because I kind of started to see what you were seeing. In a way, so we, like, kind of, not, like, trauma bonded, because neither one of us really went in, like, had trauma, but, like, you probably did more so than I did. Anyways, but we just became a lot closer because I was then going to end up moving in with her, and we were going to have a random roommate, and I, like, kind of understood where you were coming from, so I wasn't as upset with you as she was, which I think the rift between y'all, like, bringing so much distance between y'all brought so much more distance between you and I, and her and I, because I remember I was thinking about this, like, I don't know how it's not, like, okay for girls to be friends with people that aren't friends with each other, because we did that so well, I feel like. Like, I don't remember her getting upset with me hanging out with you a lot. You getting upset with me for hanging out with her.
I think we only have had, like, one real disagreement in our friend. Like, that was the only time we had, a minor, like, fight. I remember.
Yeah, I think it was just, like...
It was just
now
one of those things.
Not that I'm stuck, but now I'm, like, kind of stuck living with her in a random, but that's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, and it was kind of like...
And I wanted to live with you.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was living with her and you were just coming. Like, I wanted to live with you.
But I knew that for my mental
Which,
well-being.
now that I think back on it, like, it's hard living with friends and, like, neither one of us are close with her anymore. So, like, imagine what would have happened if we did live together. Yeah. So, anyways.
And I still had to live with this roommate. That was in December, and I still had to live with this roommate until the following July.
We're also in a community group together.
Yes.
So nobody knew anything. Like, I didn't know about any of this until way after the fact.
Yeah. Because it was one of those things where we both went to this community group, but because we both enjoyed it and we both had created relationships within the group, and we didn't want, like, it wouldn't have been fair for one person to be like, well, I go to this community group, so you can't go to this community group.
So anyways, fast forward, it's 2020. COVID hits. We all get sent home, and then we get back. And did you go home for COVID?
No, I was still in home.
Yeah. So that's what I thought. So, like, we would come back. You met COVID pretty fast, or, like, pretty early on in our relationship. Mm-hmm. And then we started dating in August. Moved back here. We got super close. I was living with our mutual roommate.
And another random roommate that is also part of the story.
Yeah. The random roommate became very, like, not obsessive, but very much, like, did not know anybody. So, like, if I would introduce her to somebody, they were her new best friend.
Yeah.
And Morgan became one of those people. Y'all ended up living together the next year. Mm-hmm. It was just this whole thing. Like, she became part of your friend group for, like, a hot minute until all of a sudden, like, you were like, okay, we're not best friends. Like, you can't be crossing these boundaries. And it got to the point where it messed with a marriage in your friend group. So that one just ended very poorly. She invited herself to my 21st birthday party, and I remember being festive on the trampoline and her coming up to us and saying, hey, I'm going to take Covey home. And every single one of us that were on the trampoline were like, absolutely not. Yeah. It was just this whole thing of, like, I don't know. I just feel like we had that pattern a lot in our friendship of, like, we would introduce each other to people, and then they would just become the other person's best friend until it was like, okay, when did this happen? Like, you're not my best friend. Mm-hmm. Like, that's happened multiple times in our friendships.
Yeah. And this roommate, yeah, she was very much so...
She was, like, aggressive.
All about herself in a way. Yeah, she was aggressive, but she was also kind of passive-aggressive. Like, she was never confrontational to you, but she wanted to talk about it on social media or to other people. Yeah. And
so, anyways, back to the good stuff. So, basically, we were just consistent friends through 2020, 2021, and then I talk about this a little bit on the episode that's next week, but you're the one that got my engagement ring. You hit it so well. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was a interesting day. I was coming home from, I don't know if it was work or from somewhere, and I'd been texting Covey because he was going to give me this large sum of money, and I was supposed to go pick up the ring for him. Well, I wasn't home yet, but he couldn't, like, wait because Sophie's over here tracking and seeing, like, hey, you said you're here, why aren't you here? And so he had to give it to my roommate, a different roommate. There's so many roommates. Who he had never met before. And she had to hold on to it till I got home. And then I went to go pick up the ring. And while I'm picking up the ring, Sophie and Kobe are shopping, like, 2 doors down.
Really?
So I
don't remember this.
So, because there was, like, a football game and they needed to go get, like, a whiteout outfit or something. And they were, like, gone. And they were in the same shopping center. And I was like, oh, my goodness. So I had to, like, hide out in that jewelry store until I knew, like, I could track Sophie and see that they were, like, in a different store, like, far away from me. So that I could get to my car before, like, because if she saw me walking out of the jewelry store, she'd be like,
what are you doing? I'd be like, you want to come shop with us?
Yeah. And then she'd be like, oh, what'd you buy? And then I'd be like, surprise ruin, sorry, Kobe.
Yeah.
And
when was that?
I think that was, like, right before your birthday, because didn't he buy you tickets to go to the game for your birthday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So it was that
Gotcha.
weekend.
Okay. That makes sense. He had the ring at my birthday then.
I think so, yeah.
Interesting. Learning so much. Okay. So that happened. You were there at the dinner when we got engaged. You were in my wedding. You were like super helpful the whole time. I can't even like put into words. I have pictures of you like steaming the men's ties the night before. I just don't think I could have got married if you weren't there. Like, it just made sense. We wore matching shirts the day before. But I really want to talk about how, like, our whole lives, like, we grew up very similarly. Like, you've got family in South Georgia, but you grew up with brothers. We both grew up, like, super tough, like, sports. Like, we both played soccer, and we were both always, like, it's Auburn. Like, that was always the end goal. And, like, it's crazy how you think about, like, life and living in the moment, like, never really happens because you're always living for the next season. So it's always like, okay, middle school, like, I'm playing all these sports, it's fun, yada yada yada, like, making these friends that aren't really my friends yet. And then you get to high school and it's like, okay, now these are my friends for now. And then we're playing sports, like, seriously, because if you're not playing sports seriously in high school, then, like, why are you playing them? Because the next step is college. And then if you end up not playing in college, then you are playing for fun, but you have to make that decision. And then if you're not going to play sports or whatever you do, for us it was just sports. And then if you're not going to do that in college, then what are you going to do after you graduate? And for us, it was always like, we're going to Auburn. Like, since we were little, both of us were like, Auburn is the end goal. And we both got there in the craziest ways. You working 3 jobs, me graduating in 3 years and getting waitlisted originally, like the craziest ways that 2 people could have gotten into Auburn. And then we both get to Auburn, randomly meet at a community group, graduate. I graduate in 3 years, going to grad school. You're working 85 bajillion hours a week, taking 85 bajillion and a half hours of school. And then you graduate with like 40 degrees. Tell me a little bit about what it was like for you, one, getting into Auburn, and then figuring out like, okay, now what's next? Because if both of our end goals were always Auburn, you get to Auburn and then what?
Yeah, I only applied to Auburn, only school I applied to. My dad went here, grew up coming to games and everything here, and so I just knew like Auburn's for me. And that's the only place. So I was very thankful to get in and to be able to come down here. I did end up having to go part-time, and I worked full-time to get in-state tuition. So that pushed me back a little bit. Also got a little too crazy and had to retake some classes. So that pushed me back a little bit. I changed my major from pharmacy to business management. And then I just decided one day I was going to pick up another major and picked up a finance major too, so that pushed it back. So that's why I didn't graduate. I was supposed to graduate in May, didn't graduate until December. And I did work. I was working at a pizza place at one time and the Walmart. I've worked at a daycare. I've done just about anything, like any industry. But once I got to Auburn, pharmacy was the goal, and then pharmacy wasn't the goal. But then I was like, well, I really enjoy sports. Maybe that's what I want to go into and work in. And that I think that's still on my heart of what I want to do. But it's just now I've graduated, and you get that question of what's next?
Yeah, what are you going to do after you graduate?
That's the question I get asked at Thanksgiving, Christmas. When I went home, like after graduation at church, I was like, everybody's like, so you graduated, now what? And I'm like, I don't know, because if you would have asked me 4 years ago what I'd be doing right now, I had a boyfriend that I potentially thought, oh, we could get married. Mm-hmm. That didn't work.
Praise God, though.
Yeah. I thought, oh, I'll have already graduated. I'll be moved to a new city probably and be working. Don't really know what, hopefully for a sports team. And now I'm still have graduated months ago, and I'm still in Auburn working at the same pharmacy and just same routine every day.
But a lot has changed because you have one, like, your heart has changed, I feel like, a lot of, like, of having peace about where you're at, which I think the Lord is moving a lot in that peace. And then, two, like, He's opened so many doors for you, like, the Titans is huge.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool gig.
And, like, the people that you're meeting along the way, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. If you pray, you should pray for Morgan and Arizona, because I remember you told me one day we used to get well-read coffee, like,
once a week.
Yeah. And I remember one time you were like, I really feel like the Lord's called me to Arizona. This was after you went on that trip with your mom. And you were like, I can see myself there. Like, I have peace about thinking about the future there. And I remember you telling me that. I remember that moment and, like, getting chills and being like, yeah. Like, you telling me allowed me to hear the Lord say that over you. And I went home after coffee that day, and I think I sent you, like, 8 job openings that are available for sports teams in, like, Scottsdale, Phoenix, like, those areas. And I still, to this day, like, every once in a while, just look and see what's available. But, like, I just think that that's where the Lord has called you, and I think that, like, He's just waiting for the right time. But
I think that is my end goal. But I think I've just been praying that I would just be content. That's, like, something that's just been popping up, like, over and over, is being content. So I just went and I was reading this book. If you graduate and you need something to read, like, it's called Welcome to Adulting.
JP is the best.
It's a great book.
Shout out JP. I know you're not listening, but I would literally poop my pants if you were.
It just talks about friendships, like having great friendships, covenant friends, career, money management, sexual relationships, all the things are in here. And I've just been reading it, and I was reading it the other day, and it was just talking about how it was talking about marriage specifically, but being content in your season. And it brought up Philippians 4:11 through 13, which I'm going to read. Which most people, if you read the Bible, it's Philippians 4:13 is one of those verses that you learned in school and in Vacation Bible School. You know, it's one of those that you can just spit off. But I had never really read the verses around it. So Philippians 4:10, I rejoice in the Lord greatly now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Now that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low and how to be abound. In every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. So I've just been focusing on praying, like, Lord, even though I'm not where I want to be right now, in a different city, not working at the pharmacy anymore, doing something bigger, having a boyfriend or being married, whatever, I just need to be content in this season because you have me here for a reason, and there's a purpose for this, and I'm still supposed to be in Auburn for some reason, and maybe I'm going to touch somebody's life at work or share the gospel with someone there. Like, I just need to be content. And I think a major part of that is the comparison game. Because I feel like every day I get on my phone or I get a text from my mom and she's like, did you see so-and-so that you graduated with is engaged? They're having a baby. Did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see so-and-so got this big job opportunity? And it's just something that you're so like, wow, I'm 23 and these people have been married for 3 years. Like, they're having their first kid. They're moving off. And I'm just like, okay, if they can all get these things, like, why can't I get something? And it's just something that I'm really having to just pray about every day, thanking God for the situation that I'm in, because there's people that don't even have what I have. And so I just need to be thankful for the little things and thankful for the things that I'm in right now. And so that's something that I'm really...
Which I think everybody, like, struggles with that. Like, even me, like, being married for almost a year, like, still will compare myself to, like, not in a bad way. Or, I mean, comparison is from the enemy. But, like, being like, dang, like, Morgan can pick up and move to Arizona, like when the Lord calls her, which like we can too, like me and Covey can, like if the Lord calls us, but at the end of the day, like it's not just me to consider.
A lot more goes into it with
Right.
you.
And also like something that I was kind of talking about earlier is like it's always for the next thing. And like now that I'm graduated, I'm like still in school, but it's like now that I'm married, like people don't ask me about school. People are like, okay, well, when are you gonna have kids? Yeah. And it's like, not today. But it's always, okay, well, what are you going to do next? Okay, you got engaged. When's the wedding? Okay, you got married. When are you going to have kids? Okay, you have kids. Are you going to have another one? Or, like, what school are you going to put them in? And then it all, like, switches to the kid. Like, okay, now they're doing something in middle school, doing it for fun, and then they do it in high school, and you're living through them being like, we have to prepare you for the next stage. And I just think like what you were saying like has so much truth in it, and I think a lot of people need to hear like at the end of the day, like you're where the Lord has called you, period. And like this might sound contradictory of like living in the now, but like the Lord is preparing you now for what's next, and if you miss out on that, then like it's not gonna be for the Lord because you're not like in his presence now. So when you get there, like what are you gonna do? Or like are you even gonna get there? Like if you don't know his voice in this season, like are you going to hear him call you to the next?
Also, he talked about worrying and how you really worry for no reason because God has a plan. And if you just remember, it was like a math equation on the book, and it said if you know that God is in control plus God is good plus God loves you, it equals your peace. And so I think that's just something, write it down on a sticky note, just say it to yourself every day, every morning when you're brushing your teeth. Be like,
yeah,
God, you're in control. God, you're good. And God, you love me. And you're just going to have peace throughout your day. Because if you're worrying, that really just shows that you don't have your full trust in God, because he knows the plan and he has a plan, and it's bigger than any plan that you could have for yourself, and you're worried for no reason.
This reminds me of Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And even like, you prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. We were talking about that in community group last week, about what does that mean? Like, he has you comfortable in places that you aren't supposed to be. Like, in the presence of your enemy, like, he is able to prepare a table for you to sit and rest and refuel yourself. Like I wrote in my Bible next to Psalm 23, like if you know the character of God and like you know his voice, then like you can trust him in the unknown because you know that like he's there with you. And Gage was preaching about this, our college and community pastor, about how like 90% of the time when a shepherd is with his sheep, they're not in green pastures. Like they're trying to get there and then they're going to another one. And if the sheep don't trust their shepherd in getting there 90% of the time, then you're going to miss out on that 10%, but you're not going to be with him. And I think the 90% of the time in the waiting or in the journey to get to the green pastures, if you're not in his presence, then like I don't want to be in a green pasture stranded, you know, like I don't want to stay in a green pasture and be left behind. Like I want to go with him. But I also don't want to skip ahead and maybe I'm in the wrong one. You know what I'm saying? And then, like, maybe it gets dry quicker or I get lost along the way because I think I know where I'm going. So that just made me think of that. Last question this is probably, like, a little bit of a heavy question, but what are some things or, like, advice or, like, things that you've implemented in your life that have helped you feel, like, more content? Or, like, what are some things that you've implemented that have, like, allowed you to, like, be in the presence of God and, like, be content in your season of waiting?
I think it's all about being intentional, and especially in your quiet time. Like, I now have a routine where I get up, I go to the gym, and I come home. I don't do anything. I go straight to, I cut my worship music on, I sit down with my Bible and my notebook and my devotional, and I just mark off at least like an hour where I'm just like sitting there just focusing on praying, reading, and just listening to what he has to say for me for that day, praying for.
That's so good. I love that you said that you spend most of your time listening.
And yeah, just being intentional in that and praying that I would have compassion for the people that I encounter, because I realize that most of the people that I'm going to encounter throughout the day at work probably aren't believers and they don't know God. And it's going to be super easy for me to get annoyed with these patients because they might not have the joy of the Lord in their heart. So they go around and they're very hateful to others, and you can just tell that they just don't have the best attitude. And it would be so easy for me to get that attitude back to them and treat them the way that they're treating me. But I don't know their story and I don't know what's going on, so I just have been praying for that compassion for them. So I just think being intentional going throughout the day, being like, Lord, remind me to just be content in this season, and remind me throughout the day to have that compassion, be slow to speak, and just to listen and be reminded. I'm also trying to be more intentional about what situations I let myself in, like what I'm watching, what I'm listening to, like what I'm putting into my body, because it does have a major difference. Like if you're going around and you're just focusing on all the worldly things, like we've seen from here recently, like the Grammys and all that stuff, if you're going around and you're putting all that in and you're not like focusing on the Bible, it's that negativity is going to end up coming out of you. And so I'm really just trying to be intentional about, like, even the music I listen to. Like, I'm not going to go all day how I would just, like, I'd go to church, and then I leave church, and I'm turning on explicit rap music or something. And I could just really tell that would put, like, a negativity on my day. So really just trying to be intentional in all of that, intentional in how I spend my time. I would sit and scroll through TikTok and watch Netflix all day, where, like, God's like, you probably have some, like, cleaning or some other stuff you can do. Like, just trusting him trusting him in the small things, because that's another thing. He's like, how can I trust you with something big if I can't trust that you can do the small things well?
Yeah.
So just really trying to focus on that, whether it be, like, making sure my house is clean and kept up for the week, like, that I'm exercising and bettering my temple, and being intentional with who I spend my time with and how I spend that time, stuff like that. This is just a season, and I don't know.
You gotta steward it well.
Yeah.
Stewardship.
And he's in control.
Yeah. All of that.
Yeah.
Getting to sit down and really, like, ask the hard questions and be like, tell me, like, what the Lord is doing and, like, how you're praying and, like, specifically, like, how can I, like, walk with you in that. So I think that's super cool that we just had that conversation and just recorded it for everyone to hear us talk about.
Yeah, and it's my challenge to you to find that friend, because if you don't have a friend that can push you to be better and have those hard conversations with, then you just don't have a true friend.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, Morgan. I appreciate you showing up to my house at 7 o'clock in the morning so that I could feed you and talk to you about the Lord. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed all of our stories and just the Lord's goodness in our friendship and Morgan's story. So come back next week for another episode with my husband. And then comment anything that you want us to talk about next time. If Morgan did good, you want her coming back on the podcast, just comment what you want us to talk about next time. And just send her some encouragement and prayers. Bye!
Bye!
the conversation. This is 2021.
Mm-hmm.
COVID hits.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true.
I don't know.
Kobe,
What?
your dad's calling me.
What do you want me to do?
I want you to call him on your phone. I don't know. Probably like 8. It's just
Call me Stanley Steamer.
and I. And he's flipping. You have a brother here now, who's doing basically the same thing.
And he's not my roommate. We should just name this podcast episode Roommates.
Yeah. I think that's like super good. I'm like, yeah, word.
Good.
We go throughout, like us go out